So if you go to Washington, one of the many different places you might visit would be the Library of Congress's 3 magnificent buildings. They're very impressive. Among the major general areas at LC, Library of Congress, is Asia. There is an Asian division whose chief is a man named Dr. Peter Yang, a Chinese-American professional. In the last couple of years, the Asian division has formally decided to use Asian Pacific American as a category for collection. And Rene Mafalda, a colleague of mine, is a Filipino-American playwright who is intent on building the APA collection. So what should she be interested in? Almost everything is, I think, an appropriate answer. She wants to enhance the collection by adding items that would eliminate the history and culture of APAs. For example, let's just take a small example. If in a region there is a group of traditional Cambodian musicians who have perpetuated court music with handmade instruments, if so, sound recordings, videotapes, sheet music, some instruments, oral history interviews, all would be of interest. But what if there are younger Hmong rap artists who use hip-hop forms to tell stories of Minnesota teenagers? Sure. Their costumes, their sound recordings, their photos, maybe photos of their groupies, would be okay, and they all would be of interest. Now, back to the Smithsonian. As you've heard, I have been a professor of ethnic studies since 1970 and taught at a number of different institutions. And I was at Columbia in 1995-6 when the Smithsonian asked if I might become a consultant to determine what they wanted to do with this particular demographic. They had programs dealing with African Americans and Native Americans and some with Latinos. And I want to just say 2 things that I think sort of have lasting impact on what happened when we put this program together. First, I will tell you that it was a sympathetic African-American executive by the name of James Early who carved out of his budget the consulting position in an act of racial solidarity with APAs. And I will tell you, without him, I'm not so sure there would have been an APA presence even today. So it was really critical that there was interaction and support from people of African-American heritage and background. Second, I want to talk a little bit about creating an advisory board, because I know that a lot of the groups here need a lot of help with funding, volunteers, outreach, and so on. And advisory boards can be a pain in the neck, or lower. Shoulder, I meant, you know. But they are really critical. So I just want to tell you how we decided to go about it in 1995-96. First, we asked Norman Mineta to chair the body. At the time, Mineta was still in Congress and was on the Smithsonian Board of Regents, the governing body of the institution. So everyone, including my bosses in the castle, had to pay attention to our group. So Norm, I have to tell you, the castle is, those of you who've been on the mall know that it does in fact look like a medieval European castle. Fake, but looks sort of like a castle. but the symbolism is appropriate because the Smithsonian Castle is the central administration. It has 19 different museums, as you've heard, and umpteen different research units and organizations, and they all have 20 plus different directors, and I was one of them. And we are all pretty feisty and independent. So there's a king in the castle, and then there are earls and barons and dukes all over the place. And it's not always easy to get us together. So my study of Japanese feudalism actually came in very handy. My job was securing the services of a part-time fundraiser because the castle supported my salary and benefits and one other person. And with 2 people, it's very hard to do significant work. The first hire made was a part-time fundraiser, which is another thing that I think is really, really important. To have somebody who's professionally capable of reaching out to the community and to foundations and corporations to help secure the resources that are not normally available to you. In general, within the last decade, we were able to count on raising between $500,000 and $1 million each year to do our work. So when we had staff meetings, we had 10 or a dozen people, almost all of them on contract. But that, I think, is one of the measures you might use to determine success or progress. The degree to which the operation has achieved sustainability. So the advisory board was critical for this. As I mentioned, then Congressman Norman Mineta was also on the board of the Smithsonian Board of Regents. Senator Dan Inouye, senator from Hawaii, was an important member. He is one of the most powerful members of Congress. Indeed, he was the single most important person in the creation of the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian, the most recent of our Smithsonian's museums. David Kim was a marketing executive at Anheuser-Busch, the Budweiser beer company. The Smithsonian takes money from beer and wine. We don't take money from hard liquor or tobacco. I would, but anyway, it's not up to me. Another member was Amy Agbayani, Filipino-American friend from University of Hawaii, who was also a member of the Democratic National Committee. We also had an officer of the Wallace Foundation endowed by the founders of the Reader's Digest. And finally, we included Professor Yen Espiritu of the University of California, San Diego. Yen is a prolific author, a great scholar, a Vietnamese American married to a Filipino American, so we got a twofer. So, from the beginning, we had a board which reflected a good mix of male, female, different parts of the country, various ethnic groups, and perspectives from officials within the Smithsonian, Congress, academia. Actually, Yen was, at the time, the president of the Association for Asian American Studies, the professional group of scholars in the field. I should mention that in the crowd this evening are two really critical and important members of the University of Minnesota faculty. Erica Lee, a good friend. Where are you, Erica? There she is. You should get to know her. She's an extraordinary scholar and a good person. And Josephine Lee, where are you, Josephine? There. Josephine is the newest current president of the Association for Asian American Studies. So she will be in a position to tell you what is going on in the rest of the country with regard to APA studies. So congrats, Josephine. You might note that we included sympathetic people from the corporate world, and David, I think, is a Republican, David Kim. We also learned from association with the Wallace Foundation and our other associations, and that experience allowed us to secure funding from Rockefeller, Ford, and Kellogg foundations. We even created an endowment of close to $1 million with funds from the Star Foundation, which is still the foundation arm of AIG, which, as you know, has been under enormous stress recently. Now, luckily, we got the money before they had all their problems. Finally, I would add that the credibility imparted by that advisory board allowed for early successes that built a solid foundation, and subsequent projects grew around specific ethnic groups. The first of which was the Japanese Americans, followed by Chinese Americans, and so on.